All right. Well, I'm super excited because we're going to be talking about how you can reverse engineer your goals so that you can have success in what it is you're looking to achieve, and how you can hit the right levers along that path and get rid of any bottlenecks in your way. So, to talk about it, I'm super excited for someone who I think has a phenomenal systems mindset. And I've always been impressed with how he's been able to do a lot of things and juggle a lot of plates. Super excited to have Dylan Carter from GoAura.com. So Dylan, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Cool. Well, let's talk turkey here about growth
Sure.
levers and goals.
Yeah, so a lot of people get stuck in this idea of being purely reactive, right? So it's what happened, me reacting to that. When you're kind of getting started, that somewhat makes sense because you have no idea what you're doing. But in order for you to really move the needle, you have to understand the critical few things, right? There's a lot of noise. You need to focus on the signal, right? So the signal is that critical few kind of things. And okay, so what does that mean? What we need to do is really reverse engineer what we want to accomplish. How do we do that? We can set it based on like a time frame, right? So we can say at the end of the year, I want to achieve these 3 to 5 things. And I recommend 3 to 5. It's a good kind of range where it's not overwhelming, but it's not too little. Then what you need to do is you need to say, okay, for each quarter, what needs to be true for me to be on track to hit those 3 to 5 goals, right? And these 3 to 5 annual goals are huge.
Mhm.
You do that every single quarter. So before the quarter starts, you sit down and go, cool, what needs to be true, right? This will tell you what projects need to be worked on. Then what you can do is every single month, you reverse engineer your quarterly goals. And then each week and each day, you can do the same thing. So here's what's interesting. When you do that, there is no, I'm not sure what to work on next. You already know the goals you want to hit. And the goal might be revenue, it might be spend, it might be employee count. It kind of depends, right? And then each quarter, you're looking at those massive goals and trying to break those down into smaller chunks that are easily worked on. Here's what's interesting though. At any point in time, you have two major things that stand in your way. You have your biggest growth levers and your biggest bottlenecks.
Hmm.
Sometimes they can be the same. So for like wholesale, which is kind of what I'm experienced in, when you're first getting started, you may have some cash. So your bottleneck is not cash. Your growth lever is not more cash. The problem is you don't know how to successfully and scalably get new accounts, right? Add new SKUs. So your biggest bottleneck is new SKUs. But if you solve your biggest bottleneck, that becomes your biggest growth lever, right? So the critical few things for you is get really, really good at adding accounts. PPC optimization, listing optimization, all these other things actually don't matter. It's a multiplication by zero problem, right? If I don't have any listings and I'm learning listing optimization, how does
Mm.
that make my life better? It's a
Right, right.
problem. So understanding where you're at any point is very important. Once you solve, as an example, that sourcing problem, now you actually do have a cash problem. So your biggest growth lever might not be adding more accounts. Your biggest growth lever might actually be raising $50,000. So reverse engineering your goals basically helps you understand where you're wanting to go. It's the trajectory over a period of time, and you're getting down to what do I do this week, this quarter, this month. But those projects need to factor in this idea of what's standing in my way, the biggest bottlenecks that if I could remove would solve everything for me. And it's typically one massive one, right? There's typically one thing that if you can remove that one thing, all the other things standing in your way pale in comparison. In your biggest growth lever, if you understand that thing very similar to your biggest bottleneck, if you can execute on it properly, all the other things you could do pale in comparison. So what does that mean? It means you know exactly where you're going and you are laser focused on what to do and what to get rid of.
Hmm.
So now you're not having to worry about working 80 hours a week. The 40 hours you are putting in are heavily focused and moving the needle in ways that other people couldn't imagine. That's what's important. So whenever it comes to goal setting and processes and all these things, this is the macro level stuff that you need to get right, because you can't just start optimizing and automating a bunch of cool stuff if it's not leading you in the right direction. So you need to know what to work on and what to set aside at any given time. You might have hundreds upon hundreds of tasks and ideas to execute on, but how do you know the 4 you should do today that makes everything else pale in comparison? you have to be able to prioritize, and this reverse engineering idea kind of helps you do that.
Mm. Yeah, that makes total sense, because if you can reverse engineer to where you're looking to go, you can figure out what are the problems and the roadblocks where you are. So it's kind of like if you're trying to go from Florida to Washington State,
Mhm.
you got to know you're in Florida, you got to know Washington
Yep.
State, and you got to know what's along the way. So,
Sure.
worrying about what the price of gas is in um, Nevada may not matter if you're in Georgia. You know,
Sure. Exactly.
you got to figure out where you're at now and what the actual solution is. So I love that. I love
Yep.
that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Well, awesome, awesome. So if somebody wanted to follow you a little bit more with some of your tips, because I know you put out a lot of good tips out there, where would they go?
Yeah. So if you want to read a little bit more like my kind of nerdiness, you can go to dylancarter.com, which is in the description below. And of course, you can click up here and check out a few more videos.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dylan.
Of course.